In Hollywood, unknowns may become superstars, but careers can also be ruined in an instant. Hollywood has left gifted actress Debra Winger, a three-time Oscar contender, to figure things out on her own. There were no controversies around her, and she had no problems with drugs or breaking the law. Hollywood was resistant to female actors with her strong personality and candor, which were her only real weaknesses. Not only that, though. She had a near-death experience with a brain hemorrhage, which left her blind, paralyzed on one side, and unsure of her capacity to face the camera again. She returned and ruled the globe, only to vanish at the height of her fame. Finally, after an absence of over 3 decades, she has made a stunning comeback, shocking the world with her strikingly changed appearance. Debra Winger left Hollywood for what reason? How has she endured all this? And why is everyone so shocked by her present look? This is more than a biography of a once shining star, it is a chronicle of a woman's unflinching determination in the face of adversity. Be prepared. For the reason that what is going to be said will alter your perception of Hollywood indefinitely. Mary Debra Winger was born into a Jewish family with ancestry in Russia and Austria-Hungary on May 16, 1955 in Cleveland, Ohio. She straddled 2 worlds ever since her birth. Although her parents gave her the name Deborah, her maternal grandmother gave her the Jewish name Mary. Deborah Paget, a Hollywood actress, served as an inspiration. Duos, 2 dimensions, 2 ways forward. An ongoing conflict between upholding familial traditions and pursuing a life of creativity. They uprooted and headed west when she was 5 years old. While her parents yearned for a peaceful existence, she had an indomitable yearning to grace the stage. However, acting was not considered a serious profession in my traditional Jewish family. Her dreams remained hidden from the world, unspoken and unspoken. She trained quietly in front of the mirror while watching old movies over and again. Deborah was a very intelligent girl. She skipped a few classes and finished high school at the tender age of 15, when most girls her age were still trying to figure out what they wanted to do with their lives. However, she opted for a more pragmatic path by enrolling in college to study criminology rather than pursuing her creative dreams. Winger had a part-time job at a California amusement park before she turned 17. She assumed it was simply another typical day. A Christmas performance needed her to drive a little truck carrying the set pieces. The vehicle was startled when a pricey costume fell off. The car swerved just as she instinctively reached out to grasp it, forcefully removing her from the car. She was engulfed by darkness. A hospital bed was where she found herself when she opened her eyes. She was paralyzed on one side. Nothing could be discerned by her. She suffered serious brain damage, the doctor said, which caused her to temporarily lose her sight and partially paralyze her. Months went by, and then weeks. Darkness and powerlessness engulfed her entire world. No one in the medical field could promise her a full recovery. No one may ever see her again. She may never be able to walk correctly. The inability to move or see wasn't the worst part, though. Her dream had been shattered. Winger had much time to reflect throughout those lengthy, quiet days. Imagine if she was permanently unable to walk. Imagine if she was blind forever. What if it was the end of her life? She had a revelation. She refused to settle for a mundane existence. And then, one fateful day, she decided something would alter the course of history. I intend to abandon all other pursuits in order to pursue acting once I am able to walk and see clearly again. It went beyond an assurance. It was a solemn vow she made to herself and to destiny. Miracles started to happen for Winger, beyond all medical predictions. She regained her sight. As time passed, her body began to move again, but she was obviously not the same girl. She didn't waste any time dropping out of college. The secure future her family had planned for her was shattered when she abandoned it. She was so consumed by the want to survive that she put herself into her time in Hollywood. Like a hero who had almost avoided death, Debra Winger made her grand entrance into Hollywood. Are you curious as to Debra Winger's first roles casting process? What made her go from being a complete unknown to becoming a top celebrity in Hollywood? Continue reading for the next section. Winger had a hard time breaking through, as do many young performers. From her humble beginnings in little TV parts, she rose to stardom in 1975's Wonder Woman as Diana's younger sister. But television wasn't where her big break came from. Originating from a movie she'd want to put out of her mind. As a softcore exploitation actress, Winger saw her 1976 performance in Slumber Party 57 as a means to an end. For a young actress who had little control over the situation, it was a painful step that she couldn't escape. As her fame grew, she skillfully sidestepped any inquiries regarding this picture. When asked to identify her debut film in an interview for Inside the Actors Studio, she chose to remain mute and refused to say. Winger was never one to deny her history, but she also avoided thinking about it. She came to Hollywood to establish herself as an actor, not as a mere symbol. What comes next in her cinematic career? It is really appreciated. French Postcards, 1979, and It's Friday, 1978, both failed to propel her career forward. The name Winger faded from memory, and he was only a passing figure. Hollywood admired dainty female leads, but she was seen too tough and angular. Still, she persisted anyway, knowing that all it took was a single opportunity to change Hollywood's perception of her. And the opportunity presented itself in the most surprising manner. In 1980, casting was underway for the female lead in Urban Cowboy, a picture that would revolutionize the contemporary cowboy subgenre. The part was originally meant for Sissy Spacek, but the star of Carrie, 1976, declined. Among the many who auditioned, Michelle Pfeiffer stood out as Hollywood's quickly sought-after successor, despite her relative obscurity at the time. When Winger entered, though, everything changed. Choosing her wasn't an easy task. Without anybody else's raw intensity, wild energy, and unruly presence, she was the center of attention, even if she wasn't second or third. Her talent was instantly apparent to James Bridges, who threatened to quit the project if the company didn't cast her. Debra Winger may not have had Hollywood's faith, but Bridges had it. Urban Cowboy was Winger's big break with Hollywood. She immersed herself in the role, going beyond acting. She was more than simply John Travolta's on-screen sweetheart. She quickly became a new sex icon in America. On a more critical note, she demonstrated that she was a formidable opponent. There has always been no shortage of stunning ladies in Hollywood. But how many could evoke such a visceral response from viewers with Winger's every look, gesture, and word? Urban Cowboy's popularity saved Winger's career and more. She gained agency over her own fate, something that very few Hollywood actresses had. On the other hand, her formidable power also served to irritate some in the sector. Take a trip back in time to Debra Winger's heyday, when she was at the height of her profession and the catalyst for some of its most intense conflicts. Not only was she a Hollywood heavyweight following Urban Cowboy, but her performances were also infamously honest, raw, and terrifyingly beautiful. In reality, she was more like a tempest, threatening to breach any and all barriers in her path. However, the tensions between her and her co-workers intensified with each successful picture, and she eventually became one of the most divisive people in Hollywood. An Officer and a Gentleman, which Winger featured in 1982, catapulted her to stardom. One of the most iconic scenes in cinematic history is Richard Gere, dressed like a Navy officer, carrying her out of the factory. However, such relationship was purely fictional. Truthfully, the level of animosity between her and Gere was unbelievably high. Acting opposite Gere was like playing against a brick wall, according to Winger. There was an unspoken conflict going on every day on set due to their lack of chemistry and connection. The picture was a huge hit and got her her first Oscar nomination, but it also cemented her image as stubborn, tough, and alienatingly honest. If her feud with Richard Gere was only an example of animosity between two performers, then the 1983 filming of Terms of Endearment was a full-scale war. Instead of a male co-star, Winger found herself at odds with a Hollywood icon this time. Marilyn Monroe. McLean embodied the golden age of Hollywood, a legendary performer with an unwavering aura. In contrast, Winger embodied a new generation's defiant spirit, breaking all regulations in the process. The collision of these two determined ladies was like two hurricanes colliding. From acting styles to professionalism on set, they argued over everything. Things became really tense when, according to reports, Winger acted irresponsibly by farting in front of McLean and then claimed it as her trademark on set. Ultimately, Winger received her second Oscar nomination for Terms of Endearment, which was a masterwork. Shirley MacLaine, however, was victorious. An ironic "I deserve this" was yelled out by MacLaine as she took her medal, as if to declare triumph in their real-life feud as well as the one they had on film. Whatever their enmity may have been, it was certain that the tension between them off-screen created a memorable and emotionally impactful film that millions of people loved. Unbeknownst to many, Winger also made an unexpected but significant contribution to another iconic picture that same year. In 1982's E.T. the Extraterrestrial, she provided the voice for E.T. without receiving any credit. Steven Spielberg asked her to record the alien's voice, and she consented. However, she never said anything about it in public, maybe because she didn't want her name associated with a supporting part. But Winger's untamed personality unsettled Hollywood. She flat out rejected important screenplays that other actresses would have battled for because she wouldn't fit into conventional roles. Her alleged affair with Nebraska Governor Bob Kerrey, a guy who had no connections to Hollywood but an inexplicable attraction to her, led others to speculate that she turned down too many opportunities. Some thought there may be health problems. One thing was evident, regardless of the actual cause. Few dared to follow Debra Winger as she forged her own way. Shadowlands, 1993, for which she received her third Academy Award nomination, and The Sheltering Sky, 1990, were only two of the many high-quality films in which she continued to feature as the 1990s progressed. Still, Winger's star power in Hollywood wasn't quite as intense as it had been in the past, despite her obvious brilliance. The industry's inflexible standards and dynamic nature rendered a woman who would not be subdued obsolete. Later on, when everyone was expecting Debra Winger to continue battling for her position in Hollywood, she pulled off the unthinkable. Debra Winger made the announcement that she was quitting Hollywood in 1995, while her career was at its peak. Nothing to speak about in terms of controversy, scandal, or explanation. Without a trace, she vanished. At the pinnacle of her career, why would an exceptional actress, who had rocked Hollywood to its foundations, want to leave? Was this the final straw for a Hollywood reject or the bold action of an independent spirit who would have none of it? Get ready to be shocked as we reveal the stunning reality behind her decision in the following section. On television, Debra Winger wasn't the only one who dared to be fiercely independent. Just as stormy was her actual path. Both of her marriages were very different from one another. One was a storm of passion and tragedy, while the other was an unusual haven of everlasting serenity. It wasn't your average Hollywood romance when she began dating Timothy Hutton. Crash after crash, electrifying moments, and predetermined encounters made up the story. After the smash hit of Urban Cowboy catapulted her to stardom in 1981, unprompted, Winger switched on the television and witnessed a vivacious young guy, Ordinary People, 1980, collecting an Academy Award. That was 20-year-old Timothy Hutton. She experienced an overwhelming attraction to him at that same moment. She was unaware that it would be years before their lives would converge in a meaningful way. In 1983, while they were both being considered for parts in the film Roadshow, they initially crossed paths. There was an electric charge between them the second their gazes met. The intensity of the connection disturbed them both. After 6 hours of uninterrupted conversation, they chose to ignore one another. Fate brought them back together at Hollywood gatherings every 6 months. Every time, a flurry of excitement would briefly ignite before fading away. They were like two magnets. Sometimes they were strongly attracted to one another, and other times they were entirely at odds with one another. Hutton was a guest at the 1986 New Year's Eve Farm Aid charity gala, hosted by Winger, when fate finally interfered. At this point, they ceased their sprint. They were married 3 months later, certain they had found their permanent home. Tragically, on their wedding night, just when joy appeared to be within grasp, tragedy struck again. Winger fell pregnant soon after they were married, but she had a miscarriage not long after. She went from being overjoyed by her new love to a pit of despair. She will never fully recover from the mental and physical wounds inflicted by this tragedy. Their son, Noah Hutton, was born in 1987, not long after she became pregnant again. Unfortunately, having a kid together couldn't save their marriage. Winger and Hutton appeared to be the ideal pair at first glance. However, flaws were starting to appear under the surface. Despite their affection for one another, they were fundamentally different. Hutton was delicate and contemplative, whereas Winger was wild and unruly. In contrast to Hutton's need for stability, which she could never give, she was fearless, impetuous, and would not be contained. After Winger's grandmother, an ardent Orthodox Jew, abandoned her for marrying outside the faith, things became even worse. Her marital prospects were already bleak when her family's rejection didn't help matters. Their divorce was finalized in 1988. They finalized their divorce 2 years after that. They remained friends throughout. They were able to have another sit-down reunion 10 years after breaking up. Even Winger's Thanksgiving meal with Hutton and her new husband were extended invitations. After her troubled marriage to Timothy Hutton, Winger lost faith in intense, passionate love. She discovered what she was looking for in Arliss Howard, something different, something that would last. In 1993, they crossed paths while filming Wilder Napalm. There was no dramatic romance or sudden event, rather, there was a mutual understanding between two individuals who had lived through enough. Howard has an exceptional quality that no one else could provide Winger, even if he was neither a young prodigy like Hutton or a superstar like Richard Gere. Calm down. They tied the knot in 1996, and Gideon Babe Ruth Howard was born to them the following year. Winger raised Howard's kid, who was born to Howard's first marriage, as her own. In contrast to her first marriage, in which raging passion destroyed everything in its path, her bond with Howard was stable and unwavering. However, Winger never said that it was flawless. Debra Winger came to recognize she had changed after years of struggle in both her profession and love life, as she revealed in an interview from 2008. She had worn herself out from a career in Hollywood. She had battled not just with her co-stars, producers, and directors, but also with the unforgiving truth of how women are treated in Hollywood. Even though she realized she couldn't go on battling indefinitely, she still wouldn't tolerate boring parts. It would be tedious for me to keep going over the same ground. If I'm not enthusiastic, I would like to do absolutely nothing. She was known for being tough to deal with due to her on-set conflicts with Shirley MacLaine, Richard Gere, and even prominent directors. However, Winger was unconcerned about winning over people. She aspired just to create films with deep significance. But by the mid-1990s, the parts that were given to her had lost their originality, were too similar, and didn't present the kind of challenge that she was looking for. While she was under some pressure from Hollywood, the real cause was in her own life. She decided she no longer wanted to waste her time and energy on things that didn't make her happy after her marriage to Hutton ended in divorce. She saw a different way of life when she met Howard, one in which she could thrive without always having to prove herself. She stood in the center of a large green field in 1995 while on a trip to Ireland with Howard. When she had the epiphany that acting was not her calling. A subtle choice, no big reveal, no great scheme. That's it. My filmmaking career has come to an end. Winger severed ties with Hollywood when her return to the United States. There were zero announcements on her retirement, including no goodbye parties or news releases. To escape the limelight, she and Howard relocated to a New York farm. Something new to her was revealed to her there. Days devoid of early morning calls, afternoons devoted to gardening, and evenings spent cherished family time unencumbered by job interruptions. A lot of people didn't get her choice. Leaving Hollywood scandal-free, this talented actress was nominated for 3 Oscars and was at the height of her career. It was irrelevant to Winger, though. Hollywood doesn't have to have a dim view of me to understand who I am. Was this the final chapter in Debra Winger's film career, or was it only the quiet before the storm? In what follows, we'll reveal the ways in which her life shifted once she left Hollywood. She had fought like a genuine warrior for years, but had the lonely struggle, where she faced off against Hollywood, finally worn her down? Even though Debra Winger has retired from Hollywood, her influence lives on in her devoted fan base and the industry as a whole. She personified courage, independence, and rebellion. She was more than simply an accomplished actor. Actresses now are continuing the work that Winger began many years ago when they demand fair pay, reject cliched parts, and speak out against industry abuses. Hollywood in the 80s and 90s was a place where obedience was more important than skill for survival. Yet, Winger was never one to embrace it. She voiced her disapproval of uninspired screenplays, publicly confronted producers and directors who degraded actors, and battled for gender equality in the profession. Remember that this was back when troublemaking female actresses could be quickly replaced. Despite this, Winger was never afraid to publicly shame influential people, such as producer Don Simpson and director Taylor Hackford, for their criticisms of her looks, insinuating that her lack of physical attractiveness disqualified her from leading parts. She was a strong advocate for herself and the next generation of black actors, fighting for their right to be free from prejudice. Actresses like Jessica Chastain, Jennifer Lawrence, and Meryl Streep are carrying on the struggle that Winger began more than 3 decades ago when they denounced gender inequality and advocate for women's rights in the entertainment industry. Her impact on the actors of today and tomorrow is evident, even if she is no longer a mainstay in Hollywood. Even if the jobs were superficial and paid well, she was one among the first to consciously decline them, even though they offered stardom and riches. Instead of taking any screenplay that would keep their careers going, she taught actors that they should exercise their choice to choose. In addition, she mustered the courage to insist on being treated fairly, regardless of the consequences, such as confronting the powerful elite of Hollywood. Jennifer Lawrence's fight for fair pay and Scarlett Johansson's lawsuit against Disney for breach of contract both exemplified Winger's courageous attitude, which allowed them to stand up against the business as a whole. Even more importantly, Winger was instrumental in breaking down the stereotypical Hollywood ideal of a female star. Attempts were made by the business in the 1980s to limit women to certain tropes, such as being submissive and beautiful. Still, Winger demonstrated that an actor need not be delicate to be effective. She was fearless and incisive. Her emotionally driven performances and commanding presence served as an inspiration to other actresses who came after her. Winger had a big influence on Anne Hathaway, Hilary Swank, and Cate Blanchett to become actors. One of Hollywood's biggest mysteries for a long time was why Winger vanished off the screen. Instead of allowing her silence to define her, she inadvertently became a symbol of Hollywood's systematic gender inequality. Searching for Debra Winger, a documentary made by Rosanna Arquette in 2002, sought to reveal the industry's treatment of women, particularly after they had passed away, as well as to discover why Winger left Hollywood. The film was groundbreaking since it included great actresses like Jane Fonda, Sharon Stone, Daryl Hannah, and Whoopi Goldberg talking openly about how Hollywood ignored them when they were older. It became a strong statement against the pervasive ageism and sexism in the business world. Winger wasn't in the documentary, but she became a symbol for the women of her generation who were underappreciated by Hollywood. All because they had the guts to reject the conventional wisdom that had been ingrained in them by their industry. In Hollywood, Debra Winger was never one to fit the mold. She was unafraid of controversy, never sought Hollywood's blessing, and never pretended to be flawless. However, her iconic status and strong advocacy for women's equality in the arts were both shaped by her refusal to conform. Winger paved the way for modern-day actresses to speak up for themselves, to question the Hollywood establishment's antiquated norms, and to demand equality. Even though she left Hollywood, the industry will always remember her. Debra Winger, who is getting up to 70 years old, isn't as visible in the media as she once was, yet her unexpected returns never cease to amaze. In 2024, she was almost unrecognizable to New York spectators at the premiere of Drive Away Dolls. Even if Debra Winger wasn't the same Hollywood sex icon she previously was, she was still there. In sharp contrast to her previous, more refined haircuts, she showed up with her naturally occurring silver curls. Additionally, her style has undergone a radical change. Her outfit consisted of a patterned scarf, loose-fitting pants, a blue button-up shirt, and a black jacket. The heavy makeup and glitzy dresses have long since disappeared. Her face showed very little flesh, with the gentle marks of time, while radiating an air of calm and self-assurance. In sharp contrast to many of her colleagues who still cling to their former glory, Winger's thick-framed spectacles accentuate her scholarly and world-weary air. Instead of wishing for a younger age, this 69-year-old woman enjoys the passage of time and moves effortlessly into each new chapter of her life. Still, Winger has never strayed too far from art. Her passion for acting lives on in her work for small films and television, even if she is no longer seen in Hollywood blockbusters. She has been a fixture on Netflix's The Ranch since 2016 in the role of Maggie Bennett, a complex and emotionally nuanced character. Acute. Used, 2023, on Fox and Mr. Corman, 2021, on Apple TV+ were her subsequent television appearances. Despite her avoidance of high-profile assignments, her performances in every part are genuine and compelling. Even outside of television, Winger has had an impression on important indie features. She portrayed a middle-aged lady dealing with the ups and downs of marriage and the rediscovery of love in the 2017 film The Lovers, a starring part that was emotionally complicated. Her performance as a con artist among an eccentric criminal family in Miranda July's Kajillionaire 2020 was another example of her adaptability. She has shown her versatility by venturing into animation with Ultra City Smith's 2021 and delving into dark comedy in the Amazon series Patriot 2018 to 2019. Despite her decline in star power, Winger continues to perform like a real actor by selecting parts for their emotional significance rather than financial gain. It is clear from Debra Winger's recent comeback that her charisma and skill have never faded. Even though she no longer needs Hollywood's approval, she still manages to steal the show every time she makes a comeback. While Winger's beauty and fame may come and go, her tenacity and independence will always be recognized. Though she is no longer a glittering Hollywood star, Debra Winger remains an idol to her devoted fans and followers as a woman who lived her life fiercely authentically, with unfaltering strength and determination. A gifted actress was only one of Debra Winger's many talents. Resilience and defiance were embodied in her. It was her stubborn refusal to conform to Hollywood norms and compromises that positioned her as an outsider. After years of fighting for her position and fervently clinging to her profession, she ultimately chose to walk away. Is it necessary to put one's pride aside in order to achieve success? Or was she driven to withdraw because of her stubbornness and refusal to bend? To ensure their own survival, some opt to conform to the established norms. The exception, though, was Debra Winger. Hollywood failed to provide her with the parts she desired, so she decided to leave. Is it a loss, a success, a sacrifice, or a decision to live her life the way she wants it? Debra Winger may no longer be a major player in Hollywood, but her legacy and the films she produced will live on in the industry's annals. Did she dare to be herself, or was she a rebellious woman? Debra Winger, what are your thoughts about her? If you like this and would want to see more intriguing biographies of Hollywood icons, please subscribe and leave a comment with your opinions.